Okay, all right.
One of are you ready to get this thing on?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and officially. Let me take a swig of water. Real quick.
You've watched this episode twice already, right?
Yeah, I think.
And you said the second time around was better than the first time around.
I mean, you know how it is, man. After you watch it, like
Yeah, you're able to catch little nuances,
exactly.
things, really
You get
understand.
you already got the placement. Everything's been placed for you. Now you get to appreciate oh wow, okay, that happened in this part. Oh, I didn't notice that, the way he, looked at her, or the way, that thing in the background, helps this scene out. So this will be my third time.
Yeah.
What about you?
This would be my fourth time.
Damn,
watching it.
overachiever.
Well, I was just trying to catch everything that was being said. I actually went on Reddit to see what people were saying, and they were tearing this episode apart. Yeah, apparently people do not like the lack of violence in the show. That was
The
one
lack of violence.
The lack
this
of
was one of the most violent episodes out there. What do they want? Like a head, like a snuff film?
How do you think I feel?
This is Disney Plus.
They're like, we want more blood, and you're like, one guy was casually was like, yeah, I could do with a little bit more blood. I was like, really? Like, this was good the way that I was like, the narrative is just too all over the place. I was like, this is a show about mental health that's basically going to mess with your mind.
Yeah, this is about a guy that's literally got 2, 3 other people in his mind, along with a god that is shouting at him. The narrative isn't going to be very straightforward,
really
bro.
awful life coach.
I mean, the thing is that, your issue was that you went to Reddit to try to get a feel, and sometimes Reddit.
Unforgivable.
Yeah, sometimes it's like.
Well, I went in the Moon Knight. I went specifically to the Moon Knight page.
Subreddit, the Moon Knight subreddit.
Yeah, and those
you're like,
guys
they'll
are
appreciate
like,
it.
oh man,
you're like, they'll appreciate it. They'll appreciate it.
They'll be excited that they'll get any type of Moon Knight play whatsoever.
Not at all. Here's the thing: the deeper the more specified subreddit that you get into, the more you start seeing these are really hardcore fans, and they have this one particular view, and a lot of them probably only really, I don't know, they're how can I say this? They're way more stringent, I think, about the property in question when you get into the very oddly specific subreddits.
Yeah, well, my question should be their answer to everything is just make it more violent and blood. I'm like, well, how does that add that
Which is
to the
funny,
story? How does that add to the story? What more do you want from this show now that I'm getting adventure, I'm getting not thriller, but I'm getting monster vibes. I'm getting
it covers I think to the casual viewer that it's this is kind of giving me everything I want. But then again, once again, you are going to a Moon Knight subreddit where the only thing they've had prior to this was just what's been going on in the comics. So
but Moon Knight's it's so funny to me. Moon Knight's probably showed up maybe in any of the cartoons.
Oh yeah, he has, hasn't he?
That's what I'm saying. So it's okay, so you guys are not mad about this, but mad about this portrayal.
Yeah,
so.
It's what y'all want? Y'all want him to be animated for the rest of his life, or do y'all want Oscar Isaac doing his thing?
So
we'll never know.
We'll never know.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get this thing started, man. Let's go ahead and welcome our
dang, we haven't even done the introduction.
Listeners and viewers at that.
So sorry to waste your time, guys.
Nah, you ain't wasting nobody's time, man.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, what would Peter Parker tell you right now? Watch for that self-talk.
I'll have the money on Tuesday. The check's in the mail.
You're right, that too. Okay, here we go. Yo, Short Box Nation. Welcome back to another installment of this weekly bonus series dedicated to the Moon Knight show. Today we'll be discussing Moon Knight Ep.3. If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. Thank you for finding the show, however that may have been. We won't ask any questions here. You're here with us now, and that's all that matters. And most importantly, thank you for deciding to press play. We appreciate that. My name is Badr Milligan, and by now you should be familiar with my co-host for this series of episodes. But just in case you aren't, today I'm joined by my wingman, Andrew Torres. Andrew Torres.
What the heck? Oh my gosh. Dude.
I had to plan this when I was writing my outline. I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and verbally say it. But I was like, you know what? I can upload it to the sound pad and have a ball. Andrew Torres.
Oh my God. I hope next time I bomb that you just press that. Like I say a joke that does not hit, you need to press that, and then
All right.
there has to be silence for a minute.
All right, I'm gonna hurt your feelings this
Oh,
episode, I
please,
guess.
yo, that has to be the soundbite for like, yo, how bad did you bomb?
I'm glad. I should just have a bomb effect. That would actually be really funny.
It was funny. We were just talking about the big crit, and I was like, yo, I love when they do the fade in, fade out of the girl's voice, where it's just like, oh,
with like the fader. Yeah.
And of course, that's what you do to my voice. Not my voice, but with my name.
My voice saying your name, yeah. All right, but listeners, if you don't know by now, I've got Andrew Torres.
What's up, guys?
Here
Hey,
with
Mom.
me as well. Yeah, wave to the camera.
Okay.
At the time of this recording, listeners, it's been 48 hours since episode 3 of Moon Knight debuted on Disney+. So depending on when you're hearing this, spoiler warning. We'll be talking about important plot points and other details that, might impact your viewing experience if you haven't watched the episode yet. But if you're hearing this on a Wednesday for the rest of the Shortbox Nation, this should be old news for you by now. If you want to hear our fresh reactions the same week that Moon Knight drops, consider becoming a Patreon subscriber and avoid having to wait a whole week to hear episodes like this. We normally make the video version of this podcast available the same day we record, which is usually that Friday, it's usually Friday when Moon Knight comes out. And the condensed audio versions usually drop a few days before our usual Wednesday release. So sign up for our Patreon using the link in this episode's show notes if you want to hear this episode and really all of our content the second we post them. And you get to feel good about supporting and helping an independent podcast for as little as $1. Even Peter Parker had $1 to spare as well. All right. So help us keep it going and enjoy special rewards and our eternal gratitude. And speaking about support, I want to thank our sponsor, Gotham City Limit Comic Shop, who makes it possible for us to bring you and the rest of the Shortbox Nation this episode and a whole lot more. Gotham City Limit is Jacksonville's premier shop for comics, toys, collectibles. Even if you don't live in Jax, you can still shop at Gotham by visiting their website, which is linked in this episode's show notes, or you can shop their marketplace on the Whatnot app. With the opening ceremonies out the way, let's get to talking about Moon Knight Ep.3. Per the usual, we'll have the episode pulled up and playing while we chat, so that means we'll be talking about scenes and different things going on as the episode plays. If you want to watch alongside with us, fire up your Disney Plus and get ready to press play. Got the player up right now. I'm pressing play in 3 seconds. All right, so here we go. Here's the countdown. 3, 2, 1. And press and play.
We did it.
We made it.
All right.
Andrew Torres. What did you think about? What did you think about the episode overall? As we're watching this recap kind of go through, what did you think about the overall pacing and vibe of this episode?
Oh, definitely the lead-in's very, very good. I thought the episode was very well acted.
Okay.
I cannot wait for this episode just left me just wanting the 4th episode sooner.
At this point, how do you feel about it being a weekly show versus like, would you have preferred this been one of those like, here's all 6 episodes at one?
No, I wouldn't want all that.
So you can
the anticipation as well as the build up for like what's going to happen, and then you can talk about it and kind of just like mull it over. Because with this show, the rewatchability for me is already started because of this episode right here made me go back
Episode
and try to watch episode 1.
Oh, got it.
Episode 3 made me go back
got it.
all the way to episode 1 to see if I missed anything because of all the new information that we get.
Yeah. I would almost say that when it's released weekly, I'm more inclined to rewatch an episode rather than binging it. Because I feel like once you've watched, let's say 6, in this case, like if we had watched 6 episodes, that's about 6-7 hours of content. Mm-hmm. I'm least likely to go back because at that point I'm like, yo, I just got 6 hours of Moon Knight. Like it'd be a minute before I went back. But with it being released weekly and the episodes are relatively like under an hour, it makes it just a little more easy to consume.
So right now we're in the episode.
Yeah. So the recap's finished. We are watching Layla get some, bootleg passports, which I wonder if you study this like scene or the sequence enough, if you can pick up like some tidbits on like how to make like illegal passports.
Well, I like the fact that this lady that's certainly just much older, she has like a up-to-date computer with all the old shit around her entire like workspace, just to show like, yes, I am a really good criminal.
Yeah, she's like a
Conveyor.
fence, you know, like
Yeah,
she's
fence.
a forger. And the way that she's talking with Layla's talking with this woman, I don't think she calls her by name at any point.
Yeah, but she's almost like a handler type shape.
Yeah, handler. At first, I thought it was maybe her mom because you know the way that the forger speaks about like her dad, and you know letting go of the past and things like that. I thought maybe it was like her mom and that her parents divorced or something, that aspect. But I think it's just that she's worked with Layla and her father and that family for so long. She might as well be family, you know?
Yeah, and she knows about the scarab, so she probably knows about what it is that they're doing it for. And that's another question I wanted to ask too. The motivation for this scarab, what's Layla's motivation behind it?
You know, I was curious. Well, I think that last episode, let's think about last episode. She ends up finally, you know, she finds Mark, realizes that, you know, Mark's got some things going on. He's also tied into some bigger things. She gets to meet Harrow and see all of that's going on. Also gets to, in a way, fight a monster too. So I think she finally kind of believes. Maybe she's like, you know, she believes.
But she believes in Khonshu? I mean, she believes in Khonshu's like whole.
I think after everything she's seen, I think that's enough for her to be like, okay,
this guy's evil. I got to stop him.
Clearly Mark is trying to stop some, you know, evil.
Okay.
Because I mean, I think Mark even explains it in the second episode that, hey, here's what I got going on. I got to stop all this. So I think that is her motive. Like, okay, I gotta defend my man. I gotta back my man.
I gotta help Mark, and if
I'm
Steven's
mad at
there,
him
I'll
right
help
now.
out Steven. Well,
Yeah. If Steven, I mean, hopefully Steven's there. Is Steven gonna be there?
oh my God.
But what I didn't get to say about that scene or that sequence is that it really paints a picture of how involved Layla is in like this underworld, right? Like they bring up Madripoor later on, and as we know from the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, like Madripoor is where all the criminals, the bootleggers, and that crowd hangs out. So she's got ties to Madripoor. You know that she's worked with Mark in some capacity as far as like, you know, stealing antiquities and that
And they're
whole career
married,
field.
so that's another one.
So already, to me, I was like, man, Layla knows her way around. She's in this episode. You definitely see some real badass moments from her. You know, we talked a little bit about that necklace scene, but that scene established to me like Layla's got, you know, this is nothing new to her. The whole deities and Khonshu part and Moon Knight part are definitely like, you know, different aspects for her. But other than like globe trotting and, you know, fighting villains and things like that, you know, this is a Tuesday for her. So, all right. So Harrow, if you're watching along with us, Harrow is leading his people to Amit's tomb, and you know, Harrow's got a following, man. If he was on social media, I think he'd easily pull in. Like he'd have one of them accounts that's like 3.5 million.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I want to say. A dude like this probably exists in Duval. Like, there's a guy that like dresses like this. He comes up to the corner store. He's just saying some outlandish shit.
You know who that is?
Who?
Trevor Lawrence. That is the equivalent
Of Trevor Lawrence fandom?
Harrow. Yeah, of
Okay,
Harrow.
there you go.
He's got his followers, and I bet you if Trevor Lawrence was like, "Hey, we're gonna go to Egypt to dig up this old deity,"
Yeah.
he could probably pull in at least 50 people to come help out.
50 people.
Blind obedience. Okay, we finally get our first look at what Mark's been up to in Cairo. And already, you know, to me, this is already a better remake to Aladdin than the actual Aladdin remake. You know, he's jumping across rooftops like Aladdin.
Just missing some song. But
Yeah, he's missing a song. This is the equivalent of these
the
dudes are like
dance.
the
Right here,
equivalent.
this is a dance. This is going to be a dance between them two.
Yeah. And I mean, these guys are the equivalent of like the royal guards that he was running away from in Aladdin. It's like,
I was like, if you want to make anybody look like a bad guy, just give them that outfit right there. Like,
oh, for sure. Give him that outfit and that sword and doing these weird sword moves and things like that. But they are coordinated.
and then this kid right over here. What's crazy to me is how much Mark holds restraint from not killing this kid.
Slaps the fire out of him.
Yeah,
though.
just slaps him. Like, yo. But Steven doesn't say anything about that. He's always trying to stop him from like killing really, really bad dudes. Like Mark, right now, this kid has already tried twice to kill him. And
Yeah.
Mark has just been like, all right, you're a kid. You don't
Yeah.
want this life. But these dudes have no problem with just messing up pretty bad.
They're adults. They know damn well, and they're the legal drinking age, so they can get these hands. And don't ever lick your sword
in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, if there's one thing Mark doesn't respect, is you licking your sword. Like you ain't gonna get
He's like,
like he's not a threat. May I highlight that Mark is not perfect. Like he's these dudes are getting their blows. Now, granted, he is outnumbered 3-1, but he's not perfect. Like he's not like a complete badass that can't be touched. Hell, he's not even that charming or smart, right? Like when later on when he meets Anton, he doesn't know anything about the sarcophagus or anything. Like Mark is still Like there's a lot to Mark where you're like, wow, he's not really that. He's not your typical untouchable badass.
Yeah, which is the one thing that to me is kind of. I would call kind of like bullcrap on is the fact that if Mark is being possessed by Khonshu, who's an Egyptian deity, he should have gave him a crash course on like, hey, these are the things that we kind of do. This is like we're really into puzzles. We're really into these paintings, like small paintings inside a painting.
You should have at least taken Egyptian history in middle school.
101.
At least pass that. But so I want to call back a question I asked you last week when we did our episode 2 rewatch. I had asked you your thoughts on the possibility of seeing an additional identity from Mark.
Oh, yeah.
And off the bat, we are 8 minutes in, and we're already seeing Mark kind of go through the same thing Steven went through, where he's waking up and he doesn't know what's going on, which leads you to kind of believe, there might be a potential third personality that's taken over that both Mark and Steven are unaware of. Like, Steven believes, Mark, look, what are you doing, man? Why are we waking up to like blood on our hands? And Mark's like, I'm not doing that.
It wasn't me.
Yeah,
at all.
Now I've got a theory that it's actually Khonshu that's controlling him in between those.
Yes.
Just because of how violent, like in this scene right here, Mark's gonna wake up in a few seconds, or he gets knocked out, wakes up, he's already stabbing this guy that he's got by the neck. So I'm thinking by how violent his actions are, but also Khonshu knows that, hey, bring that kid to the ledge and he'll talk, which is kind of maybe a safe bet. It's like, yeah, if you bring anyone to a ledge, they'll probably talk. But I just thought it was such odd timing and very specific for Khonshu to be like, hey, go do that. So I think it might be Khonshu, in my opinion.
No, I like 100% agree that it's like a form of Khonshu that has basically found a way to like make himself a third DID association.
Well, and also, I'll mention this too. I'll harp on it just a little longer, but we do see Khonshu take over Mark during that trial ceremony, which might only be, there might be a disconnection there. But I'm still holding on to the theory it might be Khonshu, and if not Khonshu, then maybe we'll see Jake Lockley, which is,
Jake Lockley don't take no shit.
Not at all.
Not at all. With a name like that, Jake Lockley,
100%.
Well,
Jake Lockley is about that action.
If you want to get super deep about it, Jake Lockley is the cab driver, and that is where Mark kind of wakes up in the cab.
Oh, damn.
And
okay, hold up. Andrew Torres. Nice.
Yeah, so
okay.
If you want to,
you didn't really bomb anything. I used that wrong.
Real
quick, that kid's dedication to not talking and not snitching. I tell you this much: Mark would even have had to put me on the ledge. He could
start dragging. He started dragging me.
I would have spilled my guts. I'm not made for this.
They're gonna meet next Tuesday. The code word is Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah. Dude, I'm telling you, I think this episode takes place in a lot of daytime, at least in this first kind of half of the episode. So being able to see a better image of Khonshu makes me appreciate the finer details, his overall design. Like
he's straight chilling.
He's got nose hair. Look at the nose hair.
Look at the nose hair. Well, I just like the fact that like he's just always like just chilling with his cane, and he's just always perched. He's always perched, and he says some like really some G shit.
Yeah. All right. So I had mentioned to you offline that Khonshu mentions, what would you do without my healing armor, my mystic healing armor, whatever he specifically said. But the fact that he mentioned healing did raise an eyebrow when I first seen this. Like, healing armor, man, that's very specific. You could just said armor, but then later on you see,
you see what the healing ability does. You're like, wow, this is really good foreshadowing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you see Moon Knight become a fucking shish kebab, and you're like, oh, that's why it's a healing armor.
I get it now. But the thing I would want to talk about as well, Moon Knight only gets his power from the moon, right? So he only has that super strength while he has the suit on?
I think in the context of this show, yeah, he's only got super strength when he's got the armor on in some capacity. And I think even like
makes sense.
Steven's suit,
This is like an organic Iron Man suit.
he has nanotech. It's ancient Egyptian nanotech.
Cotton thread. Like,
yo, that Egyptian cotton,
is
man.
so good.
Yeah. So, but I think in the comic books, it depends, I guess, on what continuity, what series, and what year you're reading. I think the Moon had something, which would make sense, right? Like the Moon had something to do with his powers. I just don't know for certain.
What if they went with it instead of making Khonshu like this 8-foot bird? They would just put him like 2 feet on top of like Oscar Isaac's shoulder.
What is now? This really feels like Aladdin, where he's what's the parrot's name?
Oh, Iago.
Yeah, he's Iago.
Oh, rest in peace to the actor that did the voice for Iago. I really do not know his name. I think it's Godfrey. Is it Godfrey?
Oh, yeah.
Voice of Yoga. Okay, that's pretty good. I like that. Is the Disney thing still playing?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, so currently right now we were just looking up the voice of Iago, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it's one of those. Damn, I'm
bro. You were the worst guy at the computer, but damn, what were we just talking about? Oh yeah, so we just made Khonshu like just 2 feet tall and just have him
and
just
it's Gilbert
follow you around.
Godfrey. Gilbert Godfrey.
Gilbert Godfrey.
Yeah, rest in peace.
My
to Gilbert
apologies.
Godfrey.
I'm so sorry, guys. But back to just basically. Well, that's not going to work.
I'll probably edit this out in the
definitely,
podcast.
please do. You should be hitting the Andrew Torres button.
Oh, you're
right.
Andrew Torres. Fuck that up. All right, let's go back a couple of seconds. Sorry, listeners. We're going to go back to save that part.
Sorry, we tried to...
The YouTube listeners get to see all of the wonderful behind-the-scenes flubbers and Easter eggs. I'm going to rewind it back a couple of seconds. I'm going to rewind it back to where Khonshu is explaining to Mark why they're going to do the whole ceremony process. So about 12 minutes, 13, 14 seconds in if you're watching on YouTube. But back to this scene here, back to what's going on, Andrew.
Khonshu has 2 summons. He only has 2 summons worth.
Yeah, he's like, look, I've only got, I can only call on these guys twice before they lose my number. But this sequence that we're about to see here, this whole trial and ceremonial scene.
Bro, the way he does the walk back, no look back.
I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I got to get dressed. And you're my suit, But I thought this might be my favorite sequence throughout the whole episode. It's done really well. I think the additional lore that they're building upon and introducing you to is fascinating.
Yeah, anytime you want to establish we know what's really going on, it's just you have to make this room elaborate with statues, 3 or 4 statues behind something.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it calls back to episode 1 where you learn about the Ennead and how it's this super group of gods. And Steven makes that correction on the museum poster. Hey, we've only got 5 listed, but there should be 9. And you see that play out here, right? There isn't the full pantheon.
The full roster is not.
Some of them are on PTO. Some of them have to make this meeting.
Yeah.
But
some of them run ISSP permanently.
But you see a few. You see a few of the major deities that a lot of us have heard. Osiris, Horus, Isis. You meet the avatar of Hathor. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. But you get to see that. You get to see that whole Egyptian lore, really kind of fleshed out here, especially tied to the MCU. And we kind of briefly talked about how we're starting to see, Eternals, and even before Eternals, Thor. We know that there is, deities and these gods and these pantheons of gods at that in the MCU. And now, this sequence plays out, and it's got me thinking I wonder how they're connected. I wonder if, a lot of these pantheons are siloed from each other, or if they'll maybe if they all fall underneath the Eternals umbrella, right? Hey, these are all Eternals, but, they were all worshipped a little differently depending on where they were at. Because, their mission, what you learn about these guys and why they're not that involved anymore is very similar to Eternals, where it's look, we kind of abandoned these people a while ago.
Yeah, it's it was ooh.
Yeah, they're bad breakup.
Yeah.
So these avatars are only meant to observe, never do much, which, we heard kind of word for word in Eternals, right? Where have y'all been? What happened to the little Thanos thing? It's we don't really do much.
Nah, we don't understand that there.
So to me, a lot of similarities to Eternals, which has got me thinking. I wonder how tied these deities are to Eternals and if they're the same thing, so on and so on.
Do these guys show up anywhere else? That's one thing I would want to know.
Well, in the comics, I believe that like. So you brought up.
No, I'm talking about like these guys, like these actually actors. Do you think they'll show up somewhere else?
No, I don't know, but I am curious if we'll get to see them in their like how we see Khonshu in his like full form. I'd be curious if we get to see any of the other deities in their full form. Like I'm curious if we get to see Ammit, like half gator, half lion and hippo.
Oh yeah, I would hope so, because the fact that they only give us Khonshu, they've given you Khonshu and what he looks like and what he's capable of. Give me all those guys.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. I also think if Khonshu would have approached this trial a little more differently, maybe he could have got his point across.
The first thing he told Mark, he said, "Hey man, before you go in there, make sure that the evidence is implicable and don't lose your head. Like, just be smart about it. Be really smart." And then he comes in and throws like a tantrum, and he's just yelling the entire time.
And also, he's speaking very broken, kind of like English, right? Like he's only saying 3 words at a time. There's a conspiracy. Bring in Haro. Don't believe this. It's like.
And watch how our boy comes over here with no cane. No
is
cane.
One of these smoothest.
No, listen.
Oh, you're right. No cane.
Walking up all right.
Smart, because it's like if he would have came over the cane, they would have been like, "Where'd you get that cane
right
from?"
There, evidence. There it is.
Yeah, Haro. I think they let him off a little easy. They're not going to ask like, "Hey, what are you doing here in Egypt?"
But let me tell you right now, like, you're dealing with the gods, right? Mm-hmm. You remember like when you and your brothers were getting in a fight and you were trying to plead your case in front of your mom and dad?
Yeah.
They wouldn't let you do anything. It was basically like how this, like little children.
Dude, they didn't drill down into any questions. They kind of just took his words at face value, which has got me thinking, because the avatar for Hathor ends up telling Mark, like, yeah, like when it came to Ammit, we weren't sure who was on her side and things like that. So there's a lot of secrecy involved with like where she's buried. And in the way that Haro talks to, I don't know which avatar it is. I don't know if it's like the avatar for Horus or whatnot, but the main kind of judge guy, right? The one that stops Khonshu from attacking Haro. Like, we see them two talking at the end of the episode. And he's telling Haro, like, yeah, we had to imprison him, et cetera, et cetera. It makes me think that maybe some of these gods are in on the whole Ammit thing. That's why they let him off so easy. Mm-hmm. Like I'm saying,
only because, why would you bring him back into, like you... They should know that he was Khonshu's fired dude. So, like, where is he at now?
Yeah, it's like
obviously you are Ammit's avatar.
Yeah, you don't. It's like you don't just get out of this business. Like you just go to another. Like you go to another. You become an avatar for someone else. Your skills are too valuable to let go. We invested a lot of money, but this whole trial does give you a sense of like the weight of what would happen if they release Ammit. Like the fact that. Khonshu is willing to
put hands.
Well, put hands, but also use his like one of 2 calling cards, or get out of jail free cards to summon the gods and try to get them to notice what's going on. It does give you a sense of like the weight of danger, right? Where it's like, damn, Ammit must be a very big baddie if Khonshu is willing to meet with the gods that disowned him. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like I definitely want to see that sense of danger. And that risk like really pay off. So I hope we do get to see Ammit and really see the damage that she's capable of.
My question is, so the name of this title is called The Friendly Type. Mm-hmm. What do you feel like that means anything? Correlation for the fact that we're watching this episode, a lot of stuff happens that doesn't feel like Friends, but does not feel. One thing I would like to say is one of the scenes that just comes up that's very, very powerful is the one where Mark finally speaks and he says that he's unwell.
Yeah, he admits it.
My favorite thing was when I was watching episode 2 and Steven's having like a breakdown. He's like, "Oh, you're crazy." He's like, "No, I'm not crazy. I just need a little help. There's nothing wrong with me. I just need a little bit of help."
That's a good point. And you could see here that, Mark being very honest, I think that is why Hathor, the avatar for Hathor, ends up helping him. Not only that this, it seems like her deity and Khonshu had, some sort of, relationship or knowing or whatever it may be. They had a history.
Yeah, the Egyptian gods could probably hang out. They probably kick it from sort of like, hey, oh, dude, it's Horse's birthday. What are you going to get him? Like, what do you get the man that has everything?
But I think it's more powerful to your point that Mark admits, hey, look, I'm unwell, but it doesn't change the fact that this guy right here is about to do some shit that might,
Some shady shit.
is up to some shady shit.
And they're like, sorry, we can't listen to the voice of a crazy person.
Jeez, yeah, I don't respect mental health and mental illness. I'm admitting to this to you, and it's not Steven. I wonder how different that would have gone had Steven
Showed up, yeah.
because he's more familiar with all of this, right? Like he's the one that knows Egyptian history and lore. I wonder how different that would have been.
Stood up and just be like, no, actually, this is all happening right here.
Yeah, now you got two voices saying like how messed up all of this is. Okay, we are seeing Hathor explain to, and I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but we're seeing Hathor explain to Mark that, there is still a way to find the coffin, even if you don't have the scarab or our help, and that's to find, Senfu's tomb, which immediately prompts Mark to go, quote unquote.
Senfu is the guy that was like that knows where the location is.
Yeah, he's
basically you're dying and you're getting buried with the location.
Yeah,
it's like it's like me trying to go to my grandfather's grave and be like, hey, listen, can I get inside over there? He left a note for me in there about where my family inheritance is, and I need to get that real quick.
So real quick, back to what's going on. This prompts Mark to put on the classic MCU idea of what an undercover, like them going undercover or incognito is.
A dad hat,
throw on a freaking dad hat. All he's missing is just some shades. That's it, some glasses.
Yeah, if you want to be real super incognito, unrecognizable.
But I do got to ask, like, what makes him think that the juice guy would know where Senfu is? Like, where this ancient, basically a graveyard attendant, like, what makes him think this old juice guy would know?
You don't get to be the best juice without having what if Senfu's people's coming to try that juice?
You're saying that you don't get to be the best juice guy without knowing a few guys?
Yeah, you gotta know some people. You gotta if you're the best juice, you're you know everybody. That's like celebrity juice status.
You think Khonshu was like, look, this is a juice guy that we all used to go to? He definitely knows. He definitely knows where Ahmet's, where Senfu is.
When everybody's using cups, now he's using bags. Bags for his juice.
That is funny. Okay, so we are now watching Mark and Layla kind of hash out and revisit some of their past.
So far, this is exactly the opposite of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp and what they're going through.
Wow.
I'm just saying right now. I'm tired of hearing about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's divorce. Listen, they should just watch this and be like, this is how you work out two things.
Yeah, very
$50 million and then Elon Musk. This is craziness that's coming out of it.
But it does paint a picture of this rift, and it makes you wonder, what exactly caused them to split. Obviously, Mark keeping the secret of him having DID is a major factor in that sense of secrecy and truth and trust being broken plays a big role. I'm gonna pivot from what I'm saying and say that this ululating, that kind of shout voice, whatever it may be, that sound effect coming out of that woman's mouth, I have heard that echoed through my childhood so much. My mom does ululating so much. She's from Morocco, so it makes a lot of sense. So when I heard that in this episode, I thought I was supposed to get up and clean or celebrate something. I was like, what's going on? Is mom here? So I just wanted to mention that little personal
shout out to mom.
Yeah, shout out to mom. But once again, back to what's going on here for Layla and Mark.
Such a guy thing to do, though. Something happened. You're fighting with your girl, and then something happens. Yo, remember our wedding? You remember, girl.
But look how quick Layla reminded him. Yeah, well, we could have still been married had you not, blah, blah, blah. But it does paint a very interesting look into, which I think this whole show is kind of one of their purposes, and Oscar Isaac has spoken about it a lot, which is, we want to portray DID and this mental illness in a way that's respectful, but also very honest and accurate. So you're seeing what happens. What you're seeing into the life of someone with DID and how that impacts their relationship. Oh yeah,
that would honestly make you feel crazy if you're waking up and you have no recollection of this whole nother life.
Yeah, and it's how do I explain that to a loved one? You know, and Mark's already not only does Mark keep that secret, but he is keeping another secret, which Harrow kind of briefly mentions when he shows up in a few minutes later on.
If you want to shake up the foundation of anything, just be like, hey, remember that one time?
Yeah,
but don't say anything after that.
Very vague. So he's obviously holding a lot of secrets from her. The biggest, most apparent one that she knows of right now is the fact that, she had to learn about his DID in this very crazy manner, no pun intended. And, she then learns soon on that he's also holding something else back, which I think ties a lot into like the comic book accuracy of like Mark Spector's relationship with his love interest in the comics.
Yeah, but here's the thing: since he knows for a fact that he has the ID, would you start asking yourself questions like, okay, how many?
I would hope it's
Identities
just
do I
one
have?
life. I'm sure that it probably came on to him like he had really no idea probably how to approach
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
So we are at this party where it is, and this is probably a good time to mention that this episode is dedicated to the actor that plays Anton Morgart. Or was it Mogart? Yeah, that plays Anton Morgart. Sorry, Gaspard Ulliel. Was it Ulliel? Yeah, Ulliel. Sorry about that. They do dedicate this episode to him. He had passed away in January due to like a brain injury from a skiing accident. And the character he portrays in this, Anton Margart, is Midnight Man in the comic books.
Yeah.
So we don't see him in costume, but I mean, he does have the name, he does have the wealth. Even in the comic books, Midnight Man was like a renowned thief that would only steal at midnight, which is very on the nose. That's one hell of a
His partner
shtick.
was Obvious Man.
Yeah. So we don't get to see him in costume, but he does play that character pretty much the comic book version pretty
Yeah, which is like
accurately.
he has the most like G like introduction. If you want to show people what a badass, it should be you doing a sport. It's like the same thing. We get to meet Haro. He's a man of the people. He's meeting everybody. He's kicking soccer balls at kids. It's like, yo, this is a cool place. Him, he got to do just run around spearing things. He's on a horse, and then he has this really lovely revealing robe that looks just very comfortable.
Nah, dude, look, he knew what he was doing, showing up shirtless. He already had like a history with Layla, and it sounds like from what I could kind of pull from their interaction, because he brings up like, I haven't seen you since Matterport, or at least his bodyguard brings that up. I'm not sure. I'm sure that they have a relationship, but it makes me think that maybe Layla might have stole some things from him.
Okay.
Or helped him procure some things illegally.
Yeah.
Because he's he's an art collector. He's got all this fancy art around.
And it thinks it's his duty to like have all this stuff.
Yeah. And that is something they established in the comics where he doesn't just steal just to sell and make money. Like he steals and admires and lavishes in the fact that he owns all this like rare artwork.
Yeah. So Collector, so him and Collector are like hanging out. He's like, oh, I like your stuff.
Yeah.
Do you like this scene? Like what scene? This is very much like the Indiana Jones scene where we're getting like all right, you have to go
Oh man.
to
Yeah.
like, go somewhere. They got to acquire information because they have to be very vague about like what exactly they're doing and why they're there.
I got a lot of Indiana Jones like parallels and vibes from this episode. Hell, I mean the scene where earlier where Mark is chasing down those guys to get information. There's a very similar scene in Indiana Jones. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Blythe brought it up a few times because she loves Indiana Jones. But she brought up how a lot of those scenes look very similar, and she has a theory that some of it might have been even shot in the same place, which it being Egypt. But I definitely got a lot of they leaned in on that whole like
Adventure. This is just
Yeah.
adventure, the
Adventurous,
mummy, national
antiquities.
treasure.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. If you're dealing with Egyptian, you're going to be dealing with treasure, booby traps, and everything between.
And you're always dealing with like some guy, some very fancy guy that collects art.
Imagine if you were like to talk to like. Imagine if you were to go to Warren's house at like 2:00 in the morning. You're like, listen, I just need to look at this Homer Simpson figure real quick because you find out this conspiracy. Like, do you tell him about it or do you just go there and he's probably like, what are you doing? And you're having a conversation with yourself. What would you be doing?
And I feel like it's sometimes honestly just the better answer, right? It's like, look, this guy's trying to summon this deity that's about to destroy the whole world. I need you to be on board with this, as crazy as this sounds.
And yeah, listen, I know I haven't told you much about my life.
Also, all right.
So now he's touching everybody's stuff. Now he's touching his stuff.
Yeah, the jig is up. Anton has kind of figured out that, they aren't really here for the reasons they say they are. Also, this bodyguard looks so annoyed that Mark handed him back the gun after like being dismantled or so quickly. But
a lot of this episode is just very much like we're getting a lot of like not a lot of action in this episode. I realize this
not
now.
yet. I mean, it's 30 minutes in. I see your point, but it's about to ramp up. Yeah, I guess you're right.
It's going to go from 0 to 100
hold
real
up,
quick.
hold up. I gotta. Andrew Torres. I gotta disagree with that. Only because at the beginning, we're watching Mark do a chase scene on the rooftops. He's fighting those three guys.
Okay.
And then we're also about to get this long action scene. I think this was a good balance between action and then also exposition and setting up, like, the story. Like, moving the story along.
And it was really good. As much as, like, a lot of the scenes are very intense and serious tone, even when this guy shows up.
Harrow, man. And good point. He's got the cane with him on this time. He's got the scarab.
Yeah, he got that walk now, like... basically faking the system.
And that's what I'm saying is like none of the Egyptian gods are able to watch, kind of keep an eye on him. Like, oh, wait a minute, he lied to us the whole time.
Yeah, like it'd be just as simple as just like watch him for like 5 minutes, see what he does.
And it's like, man, how much like freedom this guy's got. He can go
anywhere real quick.
Hera can go anywhere while his people handle the business. Because I was like, man, Hera doesn't even technically need to be here. Because he's already found the tomb, he's already like excavating it and digging it up. But I get that he needs to be here to try to slow down Mark as much as possible. Because it sounds like as soon as Mark finds out
where the tomb is,
he's that's one more problem he's got to worry about. So the fact that Harrow's that connected that he can follow that he's tracking Mark every step of the way. I think even here in a few when they go to the desert to do that whole star sequence. Harrow's got men watching them. So Harrow's very connected, and he can be there at any minute. And it makes you think, like, man, why doesn't he just take Mark off the board?
I have no reason why. Why is it because of like a respect or at this point, if you look at it, Harrow's looking at Mark like, oh, this is the replacement. This is the dude that you think is going to be like that will serve your justice. I'm not going to kill him. Because, if he would have killed Mark, Layla gave him the suits, and, this show went 3 episodes. That's it. It's done.
Yeah. Because Layla don't look like she'd play around.
No.
Like, she's got the smarts. She's got the smarts for this, and she's definitely got, the drive to get it done. Which makes me think that maybe Harrow is, there's a sense of compassion. Like, he knows that Mark and Steven are unwell. I don't think, and he experienced being Khonshu's avatar himself, so he understands like, yeah, it's a shitty job. So I wonder if there's a sense of like compassion and relatability. Like, man, I know where you're at right now, and I can show you the way.
I've been there. I've been long hours, not a lot of pay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So go ahead.
I want to talk about the fact that like Harrow came over here and blew up dude's mummy and walked away, no problem. And all Oscar Isaac wanted to do was just take the paper and fold it to make a map. Yeah. Like, that's it. And they're like, nah, man.
Well, Harrow did promise him that, I can actually show you. I think he kind of, like, leaned in on his, his self-indulgence in the sense of, like, I can also show you where real treasure is and things like that.
So Mark should have just came up with the suit. Like, he's like, I'm going to show you something real quick.
He probably should have. He could have came in a little, came with the moon. Because how can you say no to the Moon Knight suit? And here's all the action that you said that this episode doesn't have.
Very much so. I'm sorry. I retract what I just said. But the fact that...
This is why you don't wear capes, by the way.
No, not at all. But I like the fact that you find out that the Moon Knight costume is based on the ceremonial armor of Khonshu.
Yeah.
Which he basically states. Also, the fact that like he's running through stuff.
Yeah, you know what? Him running at like would look like super speed. You kind of forget that in addition to being incredibly strong, yeah, you're probably agile, nimble, and very fast. But to see Moon Knight just book it was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool to see out the gate.
Yeah, and he's like putting some hands on people.
Yeah, I think once again, this is probably the best so far, the best instance of us seeing like all the details of that suit. Like we got to see the formal Mr. Knight suit in detail, I think, last episode, but I got a better look into the actual suit. Also, how terrible of a timing is it for Steven to want to take control? Like, how did he take control? First of all, was Mark like, you know what? Okay, you want to go ahead and handle all these guys? Go ahead.
I think probably with enough fatigue and stress.
That's a good point.
Fatigue and stress would probably definitely be one of those.
He probably has to be very conscious of like, okay, I've got to be in control.
Yeah.
And the fact that adrenaline's running, he's fighting. He's
still getting stabbed. Guys. Like I would think getting stabbed still hurts, even though you won't die. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, it's like, even you're not gonna die.
It don't matter how fancy your healing armor is. I think 5 poles through your body is gonna make you at least wince a little bit.
But she was like, you know what? Don't worry, Mark. She's like, don't worry, I got the other guy. I
ride or
stuck
die.
2 sticks in him, and I'm coming to you.
Fanciest necklace, and she just left it in in dude's chest.
Yo, and that's what I'm saying. You do not touch Layla. This is where something where like
No.
Mark's like, nah.
Which I mean speaks to like like the relation, like he still cares for her, like and it really kind of tells you like he's doing all this to protect her, right? Like he's the avatar for Khonshu. He's signed up for all of this to help her out, and I think a lot of that has to do with like this guilt that he has for maybe what he's potentially done with what happened with her father. I think he's connected to that incident in some way, whether it be him that killed her or not. I think a lot of that is like guilt driven to protect her as much as he can, on top of being like, her husband.
Sorry, I'm just keep looking at this suit and like, yo, that hood does not move. That hood just stays where it's at.
Yeah, it's a great suit, and if you notice, they kind of kill. Well, I'm sorry, they kill Anton.
Do they?
No, I'm not gonna say off screen.
Do they? Like, does he die or he just gets a boomerang in the back?
I mean, I think the way they set it up is like,
yeah, he definitely
dies.
cause they had a duel and he got him at the end. So yeah, I would take that as.
I didn't even think about the whole kind of dual aspect of it, but yeah, and I'm not responsible for finding this Easter egg. I've seen it online, but someone pointed out that when he throws his moonerang and kills him off screen, the clock I think strikes midnight. So if you think about Midnight Man and the comic book thing about him stealing art at midnight, is kind of like a cool callback to that. But yeah, this, like I said, this episode was dedicated to the actor that plays Anton Margot, Midnight Man. So rest in peace to Gaspard Ulliel.
Rest in peace.
And a quick on the topic of Gaspard, the Midnight Man. Midnight Man. There was no QR code in this episode. But if you went to the Marvel Unlimited website, they did have a free digital comic of Moon Knight #3 from 1980, which is Midnight Man's first appearance. So I think in celebration of Midnight Man technically making his first appearance in the MCU, they offer that comic book for free,
which is cool. You should definitely check it out. I have not read it yet. Have you read it?
Mm-mm. I haven't read much of that first series, but I think that'll be my next thing.
That was the most interesting thing that I liked finding out about, is that Moon Knight didn't just like right off rip get his own series. Like he showed up in a lot of different places for a long time, and then got his own series. Because currently, right now, I'm reading where he shows up with Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah, he made a bunch of because his first appearance was in 1975, and then for 5 years he was kind of just bouncing around different titles and comics. It was like I think they knew that he was popular. But at the same time, it was like, he doesn't really warrant his own series just yet. Let's kind of build up that hype and popularity. So we are now watching, and we're getting pretty close to this episode wrapping up, because this is the last major sequence.
The arts and crafts part of the whole episode.
We're going to do arts and craft on top of this Jeep at midnight in the desert. And we're watching Mark fumble where he is not particularly strong at, which is like this...
reading.
Not reading, more so like puzzles, But Layla is, pleading with him, like, let Steven take over. And this is, I think, the first instance that we see where Mark willingly lets Steven take over.
But it's funny, because the last 2 episodes, Steven's like, yo, if you let me back out, I swear to God, you are never getting your body back.
Well, and Steven hasn't been putting up a fight per se, but he has been standing his ground. Like, look, you're not going to kill that guy. Interrupting Mark every chance he gets when it gets a little overboard and violent. Hey, Mark, no. Or, Mark, let me take over. Mm-hmm. In this case, like, he's letting Steven take over because it shows like Steven has a lot to bring to the table, especially in this context where it's like you need someone that knows their way around Egyptian lore and history and things like that.
100%. And then what's also really good about this, to add what you're saying, Khonshu says that not even Khonshu, Mark even says that anytime one of them takes over the other person, that person becomes way more powerful. Mm-hmm. And I think Steven, like we said, is getting way more powerful because he's able to summon the suit.
Yeah.
And then after that, he's able to like show up, like to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I want to point out the difference, like, especially right here, and because I started paying attention to some of Oscar Isaac's like acting and mannerisms.
Oh, and the way she looks at him, the way she treats both Steven and Mark is another reason why I'm like, you can tell she's very gentle when it comes to Steven.
I think she's also maybe viewing, definitely no pun intended, but viewing this as a different side of Mark, where it's like Steven is very like gentle, carefree, like, and this more so leans to Oscar Isaac. I noticed that when he plays Steven, like, his eyebrows are less arched, like his face is more relaxed, his eyes are a little more wider, like he's got more of a softer impression, like in his whole face.
Seems
right?
like an approachable dude.
Yeah, he seems like an approachable guy. Versus when he plays Mark, it's very tense. Like his eyebrows are always arched, like his jaw always
Stand and
looks
smoldering.
Yeah. So I think Steven reminds Layla of maybe an earlier time in their relationship where, there was trust there and it was good times.
This reminds me of a meme where it's like the dude she told you not to worry about.
And it's you. It's you.
Steven.
Okay, so we are watching. Steven explains to Layla that they need to basically like find the star alignment and constellation 2,000 years ago. And this made me think, Layla has an iPad that works in the desert at that, so her coverage is insane, insanely good.
She's able to point at the constellation.
If they had a really good constellation app, they could have solved this pretty easy. I think most constellation apps, you can type in, certain ones you can type in like the year, and it'll tell you, hey, here's what the stars look like a year
back
ago.
in the day.
Granted, I'm sure there's a limit. Like, you can't do 2,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But speaking about some of these characters, like, leaving it all on the table or opening up, this is probably the most sincere that we see Khonshu.
Yo, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm right there with you.
When he's like, I remember that night. It's like, oh, damn. Okay.
But he says it in like not in an
very
intense
somber way.
Very much like, oh, I remember.
Like that was a big deal.
Like life changed that day.
And you almost give Khonshu a little leeway at this point, right? It's like you got to see, even though he is an asshole and he's very abrasive in his ways of going about it, you got to keep in mind, like, he's a god, and I think anything below him is, not even worth his time. I think he's annoyed that he's got to work through an avatar. And the whole, like, no other gods are working with him.
He's playing a video game. He's like, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. But in this episode, we see Khonshu kind of, like, give sacrifices. It's like, look, I only got 2 chances to, like, make this work before I get the other god's attention, and they really banish me. And he's willing to put all of that on the table. And once again, it gives you a sense of, like, how big this threat is if Ahmet gets summoned. Like, it's clearly something Khonshu is highly against. So, I say all that to say,
how do you like this scene?
we get to see a different side of Khonshu. So this scene right here, some of the, like, the way the
spirals,
the design, the certain effects of this remind me a lot of Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood's Moon Knight run.
When they're in the sands and stuff, when they're in his mirror world.
Aside from, like, the sands, but also, like, the purple hues going on. I think we'll get a scene here where, like, the square kind of spirals and square overlays. A lot of those design elements are prevalent in the Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight series. So, like, I wonder how much, if that was a very conscious pull from the comics. And I imagine
I think 100%, because the Greg Smallwood, the colors in that comic book, as well as how they draw the dreamscape where he talks to Khonshu. Yeah, very well done. And to what you're saying, that we're still going to be getting either Mark or Steven in the sane asylum, most likely, we're going to see so much of that heavy-handed Jeff Lemire.
Yeah, I could see that.
The fact that, like, we're watching now that Khonshu's losing his power. But what makes me mad is that he doesn't give information. He doesn't let him know, like, hey, listen, I'm going to disappear. You're going to need to let Mark to take... He just gives him that. That's the instructions.
Yeah, give me an address. Give me an address where I got to go where I got to go for you,
He's like, yo, as soon as I leave, just let Mark handle everything else. It's like, well, how does he know to go? Like, does he have that power? Like, obviously, when the Avatar gets sealed in, you're going to lose all your power.
I'm curious why, if Mark would have been able to help in this instance, like help shift the stars and whatnot, or if it was he picked Steven because of convenience that Steven was already present, or if he needed, like, Steven for a particular reason. The fact that Mark isn't present to help, I wonder if that was for any reason. Probably not. So this episode is essentially now wrapping up. We just watched Steven kind of go into, blackout, go into a coma essentially. And it's wrapping up with that last scene, which is Harrow getting the VIP treatment. Hey, look, here's your former boss in Stone. We decided, like, this guy is an asshole. I thought you might want to know.
Like 5 minutes after you left, he did some other bullshit.
Yeah, this dude, and I forgot which deity and god he's supposed to be, or what avatar he's supposed to be. But that's what I'm saying is like these two like are so close. The way that he brings him here to show him Khonshu and
So
Stone.
you think he's in on it? Like
I think
some
so,
of these
man.
might be in on it. Okay.
Like Harold just gets too much
Too much of a
too much
leeway.
leeway, too much of a leeway. And the fact that guys like, all right, I'm gonna leave this room and let you play.
Can he hear us? He's like, yeah, he can hear you. All right, well, I'm gonna bounce out real quick, so you go ahead and do what you got to do.
Yeah, whatever you do, just turn off the lights when you get done.
Khonshu's like, I tell you. Yeah, and this to me is what's so crazy.
Ethan Hawke is killing. He's killing it.
Whisper Yell to me is so good.
He has not raised his voice once, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
He might raise his voice when he's, doing his summons and saying his spells, but
No.
the intensity in which he acts and like this scene right here, like credit to Ethan Hawke. He's acting against a piece of stone, and he makes me believe like
There's a person in that. Or like there's a
Not
deity in there.
well, there's a relationship. Like you can tell the hurt, and I think I love the line that he says that,
You forged me.
you forged me, but something also along the lines of like, thanks to you and how damaged you made me, it made me appreciate healing. And I definitely flubbed that, but bear with me. It really paints a picture that whatever Khonshu, even though his mission may be just in the larger scheme of things that it needs to be done, the means in which he goes about it leaves a lot of people broken and damaged, right? Like clearly Harrow is went through a lot being his avatar, and that had a big impact on why he's doing what he's doing now. And we also see how it's currently impacting Mark and Steven, right? Like it's only exasperating what might have already been an underlying mental illness condition or mental health condition. So it's like it really kind of gives you that sense of like the powers that be on here, right? Like Khonshu could care less about what happens to the vehicle. It's all about getting to his destination.
Yeah. I'll ride until the wheels fall off.
Essentially, right? And in this instance, we learn like Harrow credits that experience as the reason why he's going through this. So it makes me wonder if maybe there was an incident where Harrow could have maybe lost someone or could have stopped something from happening had they done it in advance. Like maybe he knew someone was up to something, and Khonshu was like, look, I only punish those that have already done bad.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe that difference in ideology is what caused Harrow to split from Khonshu and,
because he even tells him
Ahmet's ways.
He even tells Mark all the time. He's like, yo, he's a liar. He's a liar. Everything that he'll deceive you. He'll tell you things that you want to hear, and he's a liar.
All right. As far as the credits are rolling right now, I was curious to hear what do you think? What are your best predictions as far as like these next episode and these next few episodes? Like, what do you think we're going to see? What questions do you think will get answered? And do you have any questions that maybe arised from this episode?
Are we going to get a clear third personality? Is it going to be Khonshu or somebody new?
Good question. Is anyone ahead?
Which what I want to know. Is this something that Khonshu did on purpose for it to like work out the way that it is?
Okay.
Because right now, Mark's going to be powerless to fight any of these people.
That's a good point. And last we see of Mark and really Steven is that, he's passed out from, it looks like exerting all of that power to move the constellation. I'll even add that as far as my predictions for next episode, I think we're probably going to get into more detail about. I wouldn't be surprised if next episode is like the origin episode. You know how like they'll dedicate like a whole episode to giving you the backstory.
You think we'll see like a young Mark? Like a young Mark?
I'm curious if we'll see a young Mark and Layla and explain that. I'm maybe they'll touch on because they raised the question of like, all right, well, what happened between Mark and Layla's dad? I think we might see that. I think you might also even they raised the question of Khonshu on the night of where they where they bury or hide Ahmet's tomb. I think we might get that story as well. I think my bet is next week. If not by episode 5, it's got to be by episode 5, right?
I think episode 4 is going to be super filler, and then episode 5 is going to like. Right now, if we're dividing everything in half, like we get the first act or the first half, it ends with Conchu being encased.
Yep.
Like it seems like the bad guy is about to
Yeah,
win.
yeah, for sure. The stakes are now like are very high. You know, Harrow and his team are close to untombing Amit. He's got no opposition. Conchu's off the board. Mark is powerless.
He's
so,
sideline. He's in the
Yeah.
reserves.
So things are not looking good for anyone at all. And I think what we need to see right now is how we got here. Like how exactly did Mark sign up to be the avatar and whatnot. So that's kind of my theories about what.
Are
what
we
next
going
episode
to see any of the Marvel superheroes?
Oh, that's okay. So you think there'll be any notable cameos?
Yeah. If he shows up in an insane asylum, do you think they try to throw somebody else in there?
Ah, man, I don't know. And I almost feel like this feels like such a. I still think about your question about where this takes place. You know, pre, post, or during the snap.
Oh, and that's one question I actually wanted to ask you as well. The fact that they haven't led to where it is, has it taken the enjoyment out of the show for you?
Not at all. Not at all. Like I am of the mindset that not everything needs to be
Tethered.
connected or like this big like homogenous like piece. Like it can stand on its own. Especially like in this case where the story is good, the action is there, the character development, the characters are interesting. Like I don't mind that at all. But I think because we are talking about the MCU and that has been like their bread and butter and one of the aspects that has built this universe, you can't help but be curious like, and I wonder where this takes place and who might show up. And the fact that they haven't given you any hints at all, right? Like they don't tell you like what year this takes place. They don't even do like the classic thing where
reference to
where they
incidents.
refer to like that crazy incident that happened in New York, the incident, right? They don't even give you a
There was
clue.
like 5 incidents now. Like the first incident was the Avengers, the second one was like Ultron, and then it's like, oh, you talking about the blip? Like the blip.
You think the next time they mention incidents, they're like, you got to clarify, bro. Which one?
There's been so many things that have happened in this place.
All right, Drew, in closing, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and rate this episode based on our new rating system that we made, introduced last week or on episode 2. How many... What would you rank this episode out of 8 lunar phases, a full moon being a perfect episode? What do you give it?
I would give this a 6 lunar out of 8.
Okay. All right. Six phases?
6 phases. 6 phases. Only, is there a proper name for the 6 phase?
I'll look it up. But
Okay.
Give me your
The
back.
reason why is because, I mean, as a solid episode it was, it still gave me a lot of questions. A lot more jogging, like, I don't know what's going on. So many ums. And yeah, that's about it. Like that's my big problem. Other than that, like it was very enjoyed. I enjoyed all the visuals. I enjoyed the costume when it showed up. The comedy was there when it needed to be. It was very dramatic when it needed to be. I like the fact that we're still getting a bunch of like adventure. Like let's go over here. They added a puzzle, which I'm always down for puzzles in a show.
Okay.
What's it called? What's the 6 phase called?
It really depends. I think you would be giving it
Third quarter.
No, you'd either be giving it a waning gibbous or a waxing gibbous. I think those are interchangeable.
Okay.
I will go ahead and rank this 7
Dang.
lunar phases out of 8.
Why is that?
Which I guess would be
What was the
waning or
most
waxing.
powerful thing? What was your favorite scene from this whole entire?
Oh, easily the that ceremonial and trial scene. I thought was very interesting on how it was executed. The some
Not
of the
too
questions,
much, not too little.
yeah, some of the questions it posed. Which I mean, I guess it just depends on how deep you want to get into it. Like it could be either kind of confusing or take away from the story, and it's not really. I don't think it's that important. Like it's not the most important thing to focus on. But I think ever since the Eternals kind of movie came up, I have been curious about like, oh wow, they're really kind of playing into the pantheon and the god pantheon in the MCU, and seeing this, I think there's a lot of interesting places you can take this, where it's like, no, all of the gods are in one pantheon, or they're all aliens, and like I don't know, it was just kind of cool to see Oscar Isaac yet again. Like the dude's playing like 3-4 people at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's playing Mark, he's playing Steven. I guess you could say that he's playing separate characters when he's in the suit or the armor or the suit. But for him to also play Khonshu in a way, it's fun watching Oscar Isaac like do all of this, like juggle all of these roles and these different personalities, and for him to like execute it really well. And to watch him like act, I think anytime he's acting against Ethan Hawke is a lot of fun too. Like you get to see the
Mutual respect.
you get to see the mutual respect, but also the ideology differences at play too. And I think a lot of times that's just as much fun as watching like him, throw some moon rings and beat people
Yeah,
up.
because you get to see Mark's version with Ahmed, and then not Ahmed with Harold, and then Steven's version with Harold.
Yeah. And that scene where, he does say like, I am unwell, but that doesn't change the fact that, this guy is up to some stuff was very powerful. So yeah, that's probably my favorite scene. I give it a 7 out of 8. Great amount of action, great amount of like exposition, moving the story along. I don't feel lost. I'll say that. Do you feel lost at all? Like, or do you feel like you're tracking it pretty well?
I feel good. Like I would say, like if I wanted to get into the nitty gritty of like how things are shaking out, it's like, all right, I can pull this apart. But for the most part, I feel like I am tracking very well to see like what is the clear cut beginning, middle, and end of this story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't feel lost. I don't feel lost. Sorry. I don't feel lost, and it's been a lot of fun watching this play out. So I'm on board, man. So we've only got
3 more episodes.
3 more episodes, which means we're only at the halfway mark, both in watching and also releasing this series. But it's been a lot of fun recording and then putting the series out, which leads me to addressing the listeners. If you've got any comments or thoughts, predictions, and whatnot regarding the series or anything that we've shared, we want to hear from you guys, man. Send us an email or hit us up on the DM. Let us know what you think about this Moon Knight recap series that we've been doing. Would love to get more folks chiming in and joining in on the conversation. With that being said, how many coins is it? Like it was at 15 cents?
Yeah, basically.
Oh, man. Okay. With that being said, Shortbox Nation, there you have it. Thank you for hanging out with us this week. But it's time to close out the show. Next week, you'll get to hear our reaction and commentary for Moon Knight Episode 4. That will drop on Wednesday. And if you haven't done so already, please check out last week's interview with Jordan Blanco. He's the head honcho of League of Comic Geeks, an online platform that's connecting comic fans from across the world. If you are a comic collector, a comic reader, someone that goes to your shops every Wednesday to pick up books, definitely an interview that I recommend to you, and a tool at that. There's a website and app version of League of Comic Geeks that would be an indispensable resource for you to have. So check that out. And if you want to hear all of our episodes the second we post them before anyone else, consider becoming a Patreon subscriber and avoid having to wait a whole week to hear from us. Sign up for our Patreon using the link in this episode's show notes and support the podcast for as little as $1, all right? Help us keep it going, enjoy special rewards, and, of course, epic bragging rights. So go to patreon.com/theshortbox right now or click the link in this episode's show notes to sign up. Drew, you got anything to say before I officially close this out?
Nope, everything's good over here.
All right. In the meantime, give us a follow on social media if you aren't part of the bandwagon already. But most importantly, take care of yourselves. Have a great day, and please continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. We'll talk to you soon. Peace. Andrew Torres.